So, okay, we are live. Welcome to the 7th episode of BINJ Live. I'm here with my usual co-host, Chris Faraone, also of BINJ. And tonight we have our special guest for the week, C. Scott Morris, who's an Emerson College graduate student and a Boston-based reporter. And yes, he's interning with BINJ. Surprise, surprise. So welcome, Scott. Nice to have you here. And, say hello to the nice people. Yeah, you are. Sorry, I'm interrupting. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here. I'm excited to kind of hear from you guys about the different processes, and I'm definitely a fan of BINJ and their reporting. So.
Oh, look at that. What a classy fade out, Jason.
I'm cutting out, they're classily fading out the cheesy AI-generated Halloween music. We just thought we'd have a little bit of a theme, which I neglected to mention.
Let's dig a little deeper than usual. Scott, what's your where are you from? And where do you I don't know, tell us. I'm gonna ultimately ask what you grew up reading or anything like that. But yeah, where are you from? Give us your background.
So it's a little complicated. I moved a lot as a kid. I was born in Florida, moved through Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, ended up in Hawaii for about 6 years, and I moved to Boston in July this year. So it's been the biggest change lately.
That's why you're a quick study, I guess. You pick things up pretty fast, as far as we've seen, which is good. Good for a young reporter. What would you say are some of your first reporting? Were you on high school papers? Did you used to make your own little magazines and pass them out to people? I started writing about music on blogs. What are your any kind of like early media experiences?
Yeah, so kind of what even landed me in journalism, I was kind of a late starter, I guess. I was finishing my undergrad at UH Manoa, and I was driving back with one of my friends who was a ghostwriter, and he had picked up a freelance gig writing for a surf company called Dark Art Surfboards, and he didn't want to do the job anymore, so he ended up giving me the job, and I picked it up and tried it for the first time and had a lot of fun just with the interview process, meeting new people, hearing their stories. I was a big fan of surfing, so I enjoyed kind of the subject matter as well. And that turned into a really good relationship. They flew me out to California. I got to meet like all the employees and different pro surfers, and decided that I could maybe leverage the same process to cover something more important and more impactful. So that's when I started looking at different journalism programs and landing at Emerson.
And how long ago was that? Like, how long ago were we talking with that stuff? Like when you first picked up journalism?
Yeah, that was 2023.
Wow.
You're not that late of a bloomer. You're young.
Yeah, I'm 26, so yeah.
Yeah,
that's young. I mean, by our standards anyway.
Well, I moved here to be a reporter. I think I was about the same age. I have so many parallels with your coming up story, but there's a couple striking differences. One is that I thought I was this amazing writer, and I was maybe decent, but I love the way that you got into it, even though it's, a commercial gig, but doing interviews and actually like reporting something, not just like thinking you know everything the way I was that schmuck. So many of our young reporters, even some of the great ones, come in like that, and hopefully unlearn it. You seem to kind of, but how about before that? Were you writing poetry as a preteen, and were you always a writer, or was this like out of nowhere, like you studied science and now I'm writing about surfboards and going on the trip?
We asked because you're very polished, for someone who's only been doing this 3 years, I mean, we have people that have been doing it for many years who are not as polished as the first piece we're going to be discussing.
So it's kind of funny you bring that up. I started my first 2 years in undergrad actually as a bio major. So I was doing research a lot of research papers, extensive research papers. And I really enjoyed the research process. And then when I ended up switching my undergrad major to the social science of oceans, which looked at, policy and cultural changes within Oceania. And that's when I probably started doing more journalism-esque work. I remember doing a project on, what was it? I did interviews with people across all of the islands on how they kind of centered environmental justice in their communities. And I did like kind of a multimedia project around that with some film. There was like a reforestation project in Waikoloa, Hawaii, near where I lived. So I'd go and I'd interview people there and volunteer with them. So
And by Oceania, you mean the Pacific or what?
what is it?
By Oceania, you mean the Pacific
Yeah,
Rim?
I mean all of the islands comprised within the region of Oceania. Yeah, so you have Micronesia, Melanesia, different. Yeah, it's pretty expensive.
So I can't help but I have to mention that it's getting cold out here. Most of the places you mentioned that you lived are I wouldn't say necessarily more beautiful than Mass, different, and certainly warmer. So how is it? Are you gonna be able to report in the cold? And I'm gonna give you a big tip, as you know, we like to mentor our interns and young reporters.
Oh, yeah.
When it gets really cold, and this is from the New Hampshire primaries, a lot of the older reporters used to watch us young reporters until we learned better, struggle with pens, and then you would see them with number 2 pencils, and I finally realized that these old timers are onto something. So if your pen ink starts freezing, you protest in the middle of the winter, you never know what we're getting into this year. A number 2 pencil will always do you good. There's my advice, unsolicited, as you.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip and one.
So are you getting cold or what?
Well, I went to high school in Pennsylvania.
That's pretty cold, yeah.
It would get pretty cold there, so I'm not totally new to the cold weather, but it's kind of nice, really. I've enjoyed having seasons again after not having them for 6 years. So definitely.
Yeah, it must be much better to be here than in paradise. You're right. Yes.
I will say, yeah. Coming into journalism, as someone that is somewhat new, I think one of the biggest learning curves for me has been with note taking. Generally, I'll bring a recorder with me covering protests and stuff, and I'll take notes, with a pen, but then I'll have a backup recording to reference the notes and make sure I got everything perfect.
Good. Yeah. And if you can have 2 recordings, even better,
Yeah. And one thing I always like to say is it's fun, and it's definitely like the movie journalist in all of us to sit there at a live event or while covering something, writing down the color of people's shoes and these cute little details. But I can't help but I have to always remind that a couple of pictures, you could do that shit later. There's important stuff often in the field to cover. So I want to ask, because I think, a lot of these interviews that, we'll be doing them with people who've been writing for us for years, but also some new reporters. And I have no doubt that you're headed places, and you'll be looking back on this in a couple of years. So not to put the pressure on, and this will be like the Genesis interview. But I would say, so you have some of your obviously some of the environmental background we've spoken about, and feel free to talk more about that. But you came to us with a couple interests, things you like to report on. Just give us an ideas like that. How you kind of, and you seem comfortable really with anything. But as far as those wheelhouses, as we say, those kind of areas of interest, just give us some idea how you came to those. What were maybe some, even if they weren't as a reporter, just some things that you encountered. That have brought you to want to cover, certain kinds of policy and topics, and even smaller subjects within environmentalism.
Yeah, totally. I think I'm trying really hard to diversify, my beats as of right now, since I'm starting out. That'll give me more options for the future to kind of pick and choose what I want to go towards. Because while I was in Hawaii reporting, because I started this program, while I was over there, I really tried to focus on different social services. I focused on unhoused communities, kind of near Ali'i Drive, which is the main road which goes through Kailua Kona. Because that's an ongoing, issue that stems from coordination with the county, and the extractive tourism industry, as well as, drastic housing prices. It's an extremely complicated issue, but if you can just pick out different slices of it, you can really kind of capture the humanity that is struggling in between all those different variables. And then, beyond that, I did focus a little bit on a little more data stories with opioids as it relates to Hawaii, and kind of how it's coming into Hawaii, and the different effects that we're seeing which ironically enough, I think the police chief for the west side of Hawaii is now an open vacancy position, which is kind of interesting.
Is that related to your reporting? Is that what you're insinuating?
No, not related to my reporting, but there were issues within.
Well, tell us. I mean, we got time. I mean, we're obviously covering. We've covered the scourge of opioids in Massachusetts for years, and I can only imagine there's similarities, but there are also a lot of pretty significant differences. So, just give us, what, how. Give us some years. Like, what does the epidemic look like there? What did it look like when you left? And as far as you know about Massachusetts so far, any notable differences?
Yeah. So I spoke with Dr. Kevin Coons, who is a head doctor over there that worked with the Hawaii Fentanyl Task Force, and he explained to me that opioids really came to Hawaii in 3 different waves. I'm not going to say the exact years because I'm not entirely sure, but the first wave I believe came around the 90s, the early 2000s. Next one around 2013, and then one after that. And what he said was that the opioid crisis really started in the east and moved west. So Hawaii was kind of lagging behind that. So you can see, I think it might have been worse than West Virginia. You can probably correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right. Massachusetts, West Virginia, there's a handful of states, and we're seeing that represented in the commensurate amounts of opioid settlement, abatement funds that are going to these states. But it ultimately hit everywhere, and a place like Hawaii may have been caught more off guard. I don't know. Is there a heroin problem before OxyContin? Was heroin? Were there? In New York, for example, got smashed in the 70s with heroin.
Well, I was going to say, I used to watch Hawaii Five-0 in the 70s, and they were definitely fighting drug running. I don't think it's a entirely new thing. And opium before that may have transshipped through there. I mean, I don't know.
That would make sense.
Yeah, totally. Meth and heroin were the two main impacts to the islands for sure. And
wow.
It's gradually changed. There's a graph in one of my old projects where you can see like the heroin line remaining somewhat consistent, whereas the fentanyl overdoses is moving up exponentially. So
crazy. And what can you tell us about what's some independent media like in Hawaii, or what was your experience? Is it a place where you have to leave unless you or is what are the options? What are the opportunities? I know there's a couple independents, right? And also I'm also curious as to it's got to be tough with all the different islands to you cover a huge thing on one. Are the people on the on the next island, do they give a shit? Because I know in a place like Long Island where there's these small little towns, they often don't, and that's attached. This is, hey, that's across the water. I don't care what that. I don't know, what is that a thing, or what's it like to report out there?
Yeah, totally. I would say it's definitely fragmented to some extent, especially where I was reporting on the Big Island of Hawaii. It's very rural, very close communities, and the tourism industry isn't quite as big as in different islands like Oahu and Maui. So that also creates a lot of different social, constructs towards different, investments and money and extractive industries that you can kind of see. Reporting wise, we had West Hawaii Today, which was probably the main media outlet, and that has diminished down to the point of, I believe, only one person working there. It's pretty devastating. We have Big Island Now, which was a online media, and then I'm trying to think. There's the Hawaii Tribune Herald as well, which I think shares articles with West Hawaii Today. But
one of them had a couple of big stories a couple of years ago that like a bunch of public officials heads rolled. I recall it. If any of that rings a bell. I just remember seeing someone at a conference. I should have. I'll do my research next time. You keep saying extractive industries. What in particular are you talking about?
Extractive. Maybe extractive's not the perfectly correct term. Just tourism industries where you're seeing major
people who take and don't give back. I get it. Extractive.
Yeah. I was just checking out, by the way, to check something I saw this morning. American Journalism Project just gave $3.5 million to 3 newsrooms, and one of them was Honolulu Civil Beat. So that's, they're currently, by our standards, apparently lavishly funded for another
He might
year
have
or
been the
whatever.
one that had a lot of those big
I think
stories.
so, Chris. I think so.
Yeah, Honolulu Civil Beat is the big, like probably one of the bigger publications there, and everything there is very well researched. I actually pitched an article to them
Okay.
2 years
Yeah.
ago or 1 year ago.
Yeah, and that would be getting into the weeds for us to start talking about what we think about the American Journalism Project and stuff like that, and their ups and downs, their like good choices by our lights and their missteps, which we think are many. But we cannot fault them for the newsrooms that they're dumping money on, especially in a state like Hawaii that I'm sure is more of a news desert than Massachusetts is. And
yeah, and to my point, the Big Island of Hawaii is at risk of becoming a news desert. There's very few initiatives covering things. County meetings are very rarely covered. Maybe one publication will. So
wild, and I'm sure there's not as much pickup in the mainland as neighboring states get. For example, Boston, Massachusetts, I'm sure gets more pickup in the New York Times than Hawaii does.
I will say that ironically enough, when ICE actions first became kind of a big thing, they started moving to the coffee farms on the Big Island. And the New York Times actually came out and did an article specifically on that in South Kona, looking into some of their actions impacting the families down there, the coffee farmers, which are a lot of Latino heritage people.
Interesting. And of course, you're prepared to talk about what's your former Congresswoman, current Trump administration, crony. Why am I blanking on her name?
Now I'm blanking on it. Hold on.
Oh, it's all good. People are who we covered in New Hampshire, of course.
Yeah, we're looking really good here, being all quiet and not.
It's all good. This is all
I should have come loaded for bear with my Hawaii information.
We'll talk
Tulsi
about
Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, so sorry.
So, anyway, I don't want to. We're not going to get sidetracked on Tulsi unless you have something to tell us.
I don't have much comment on Tulsi Gabbard.
Good. All right. Yeah. Everybody's
she's kind of a mixed bag. You know what I mean? She's someone that could be on the left, but is clearly chosen
down there, man. It's a long.
Well, who didn't? From what I can tell, maybe Scott's. No, I don't think so.
So Scott, tell us. All right. So you get to Boston. Give us, before we get to the reporting landscape, just tell what are your kind of observations. Clearly, there's some cultural differences up here from Hawaii, and also I've been here for so long. I can't even imagine getting to know a new city hall, a state house. You got all of the above in Boston. Tell us how you've been getting acquainted, what your impressions were even before the cold. Anything totally strange? I know in California you have to bring your own refrigerator with you when you move. I don't know in Hawaii if there anything totally came as a shock here in Massachusetts.
I don't know if anything really shocked me, except I am very pleasantly surprised with the public transport. I know that's always something that people kind of laugh about, but it is fantastic and it's super accessible. So I've really appreciated that as someone that doesn't really come from a place with that. I also live in the city, so it's very easy for me to get to a T station and kind of get anywhere I need to go.
Ride that green line around downtown. People in Jamaica Plain are yelling at the top of their lungs that they're listening to you right now. Somerville, Cambridge, this guy just has to go. But I get it. We obviously have our issues with the T. Our garbage rail kids are testament to that. But I think I definitely see what you're saying. And of course, this is a historic train that you are near. You're right near the first ever subway ride in America. And how about reporting? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just going to say we're the most, I suppose, European American city, quote unquote, major city, although we're not really that major by global standards population wise. But yeah, I mean, we have public transportation. Yes. Whereas I imagine Big Island, it's just some buses, maybe.
Yeah, that you got that about right. I mean, everyone drives cars basically. It's not consistent enough public transport to really be reliable. It does exist, but
I watched about 5 different Hawaii YouTubers, and one of the shows was talking about the repeated attempt to have inter-island ferries and why it hasn't worked, because it's just way, way bigger an area to cover with ships through very treacherous waters. And people just weren't using them because it's like a really long trip between some of the islands, I guess. So like it sounds heavy.
The super ferry was an initiative. They started to bring cars from Big Island to Maui, I believe, at one point, and I think it hit a whale, and then it just got cut.
Okay. I didn't hear about the whale. Wow, that's a bag.
So before we get to what you've actually been reporting on, just tell us like what seemed hot to write about. I don't know. I don't want to project, but for me, it's like if I was a new reporter in town, things were much sketchier and more corrupt when I got here. Menino administration, even Walsh administration, doing crazy things like trying to bring the Olympics here. Obviously, the Wu administration has its mini scandals and the soccer stadium, and nothing is ever perfect. And I'm certain this is certainly not an endorsement, but I don't know. Does Boston seem fun to cover to you right now? Maybe it does. We're in the middle at the end of an election. How about the state? Even looking at the news, things you see, you are right downtown. What kind of seemed like, oh, I want to get in this, and then wherever you come from, there we'll get to. But what were you saying? Like, for me, when I arrived here, this is like a young reporter's paradise, where you could skateboard from City Hall to the State House, and just all sorts of stuff going on. Really, it was just there's not a lot of there's not a lot of states where the capital is also the largest city. In Massachusetts, unique for that. And anyway, so that was. I don't want to totally give you my story, but for you, what were you like? Oh, I definitely want to. Did you want to find like the Irish mafia of yore that isn't here anymore? What were you hot for?
I think, ultimately, I'd like to center my reporting around something that really makes a difference and makes life better for people that need it, or people that might not be generally in the purview of different things. But when I first got here, I was firstly really excited just to get involved with all the different, journalism organizations that are even here. It's really nice being right by Emerson as well. We have the Berkeley Beacon, which is a great way to get connected with a lot of other people that are interested in the same thing. Being right by the State House has really been exciting as well. I got to cover a bill called the Defend the Guard bill that was discussed. I don't think it's gotten passed, but it was still kind of an interesting thing to cover. There's been a lot of action in Boston Common lately, so that's also been really interesting with the No Kings protests. There also was that Charlie Kirk vigil, which got pretty heated at certain points as well. And then
right outside your front door. What a great place to go to journalism school. It's like, hey, it's right there. No, it's one of the reasons I didn't go to Syracuse is because as great of a school as Newhouse is, I just kept thinking. I'd already been in upstate New York for 4 years as an undergrad, and I just kept thinking, like, I don't want to just be reporting around it. Not that there's not a million issues. That was my idiot young thinking, but I still think Boston is just such a great place.
But there are grad student dorms. Is that basically the deal?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so you're in an apartment.
Renting, an apartment right now.
Yeah, cool. Well, we don't have to like actually ask you where you are.
No, I don't think. Yeah, give us the drop the pin. So let's talk about what you have gotten into. Give us whatever bring us show us the guts of one of your stories. What's reporting
We've had
process.
The story, Chris. I'll just put it up here for a second. So
immigrants
hesitate to access social services in Somerville. Yeah. So tell us about your story, Scott.
Yeah, so I mean, this is an ongoing thing that's been happening in Somerville for quite some time, even before I got here with these ICE actions. Operation Patriot, which occurred in May, was a pretty shocking action for a lot of people in Somerville. And I think it sparked a lot of fear. I know it sparked a lot of fear according to several different sources. But in this article, I really tried to capture kind of areas where social services may be more inaccessible to certain vulnerable populations. So, with these different ICE actions, different immigrant groups are scared of going out in public, because these cars are stopping and they're grabbing people. So Jordana, one of the sources, really provided some great insight into some of these key problems resulting from the different ICE actions, mainly Foss Park, which used to be a source where people could find work and just kind of meet casually. So that's causing, some economic troubles for people. And then, speaking with Sarah Karubi from the Welcome Project, she helped provide some really, strong evidence that, that the ICE actions are impacting enrollment and accessibility for students, even to the point where they might not be attending different programs because they don't even have the mental capacity, or feel like they can't be learning, in these times. Eloisa Galval also provided some really great insight into some of the other kind of variables in terms of getting groceries, going to school, purchasing plane tickets, and how they've been helping people out. That infographic you just scrolled by kind of really highlights the impact on the Brazilian community that these ICE actions have had. You can see in that purple, that was Operation Patriot, where you see a large uptick in the number of arrests.
And this is important on so many levels. For one, it's like a day like today where they are, we're hearing that they're yelling at the supervisors. They're supposed to be arresting 8,000 people a day, and it's, all these years that activists and journalists wrote about police quota systems that they denied, and every study shows how horrible they are. And there's been some, momentum against them. And now it's just like, the president, the administration is pushing, I hate to even call these arrests. It's like, this unbelievable what's going on. And so what you have here, we're looking at some hard numbers of the arrest, but the kind of reporting you're doing is really that first draft of history that I think is critical, because there's going to be a lot of numbers that we see in a year, in 2, in 3 years, about what these policies have led to. My mother works with young people in Florida, and they're talking about, there's tens of thousands of young people not showing up to school. But so tell us about what's it like to, what's the, not the trick, but what did you do, and people you're speaking with, what are they doing to kind of grapple with it in the moment? We don't know what the exact toll is going to be, but and tell us some of the challenges of reporting something that's in so fluid and in such flux.
Yeah, it's not the easiest topic to report on. It's a very emotionally charged subject, and people are really worried about even talking. Even the nonprofits, they talk about some fear of pushback, even for like talking to a journalist. But I will say, overall, the people in Somerville really do seem to stand with the immigrant community. I just attended a vigil and a march, I believe, a week or two ago, in which hundreds of people marched down Broadway, in support of immigrants and denouncing the ICE action. So I really do think it's important to highlight kind of that pushback that we're seeing on behalf of people in Somerville. And that's kind of what I've been looking into for my next paper as well.
I was just going to ask, where are you going with this? This is going to be a series, it looks like.
All the great ones lead to another one, right, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So my next one will really be looking into how social services are coordinating the large uptick in volunteer applications that are pouring in from people that are trying to get involved, and some of the different areas people can get involved that they're still needed. And then Jordan Harris from The Connection, he's a reverend. He mentioned that, what's really needed is people developing their own programming and seeing the needs highlighted in their communities and taking the initiative upon themselves to form new programs, new groups, get funding through that, and not just apply and ask to be placed, but to, start working on it themselves and kind of leading these new initiatives.
Yeah, I mean, after the 9/11 tragedy way back when, right? Certainly from your perspective, Scott, 2001 and stuff in that period, I was involved in that kind of work, with different immigrant communities. I had, organized something called the Bus and Nonviolent Defense Network. And then this is, by the way, folks, this is when I was not being a journalist. I was being, I was working as an advocate, as a labor organizer in that period. So this was part of my work for that. But and that people thought the name defense sounded a little too strident, so it became the Boston Nonviolent Support Network. But I mean, it is the kind of thing that Chris and I certainly like to do with our publication, and we do tend to attract journalists like Scott here, who are pay attention to the world around them and try to encourage people to get involved to make a better society. So we like it when somebody proposes this kind of thing to us, because it can matter. I mean, the idea that you don't have to just sit and watch any of various screens that we're all surrounded by, but you can get directly involved, and certainly in my own writing, this year in particular, I've been letting folks know, you don't have to just hear about ICE busting people and carting them off. Maybe you can at least go bear witness. Maybe you can at least, without violating any laws, just kind of be there in some numbers so that it's kind of difficult for them to just haul people away. And we've been seeing more and more and more of that kind of stuff, even as ICE's budget has grown, even as they have more boots on the ground with people that, and let's be fair, are not really very qualified to be mall cops, let alone doing the kind of thing they're doing. And I think that the Chicago mayor, whose name I'm spacing on now, would just made a nice statement like, an immigration violation, a typical one, is a civil offense. What is all this insanity? What do you do? What is this society doing? So continue, Scott. What else are you planning to do with this piece?
I mean, I really hope this piece just kind of shines a light on kind of an angle that's not as covered, with this subject matter. You see a lot of articles on ICE and the constitutionality of their actions, on whether, this is ethically, something atrocious. But, I don't think as many people are really looking into some of the exponentially greater impacts for the people that are left behind, the families that are left behind after these abductions. Because, I spoke to some people and they're really mentioning that the breadwinner of the families is often the one who is abducted, who is maybe, going to work. Like for the instance of Foss Park, where people were, going to work and then they got arrested. So, then housing payments become difficult, phone payments become difficult, and that's the only way to connect with some social services. So that little bit is lost, leaving vulnerable people in an even worse off position.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you wrote very well in your first piece about how trapped people have become, and then they stop being able to pay bills. They don't feel like they can work, and then they lose their phone service, right? And different advocacy groups have been trying to deal with that in one way or another that we needn't belabor, but it's creative, but it's tough. I mean, I would say I'm in the camp, as longtime political analyst and, kind of paying attention to this stuff, that, I still hold to the idea that Trump and his administration can talk about expelling millions of people or whatever. It's not going to happen. What's left of our economy would collapse overnight if that were to actually happen. And we've already seen the Trump administration give wide kind of, get out of jail free cards to lots of people in core industries, even hotels, but also agriculture in particular, right? There are raids. There are raids across sectors, but it's more, I think, about creating fear. And you're right, Scott, community like Somerville, where BINJ is actually based, for the, those people that don't know, officially anyway, we're based in Somerville, although we're still Boston centric and we haven't changed our name because we're not just covering Somerville. It was, when we did cover Somerville for 3 years with our Somerville Wire project and the Somerville News Garden project it was part of, but couldn't, afford to continue it. We know the area well. It is true. It is about as immigrant friendly and open-minded to the world as anywhere in the U.S. You're not going to find a lot of communities that are more welcoming to people from everywhere, and that are not like, you took our jobs, kind of thing, like in South Park. I don't want to do the accent too much because I don't like it when people, I work with a lot of Southern friends and stuff. It's not fair, like to like tar an entire region of the country with like, certain kinds of behavior. It's not even true, right? But those of you that watch South Park, there's this shtick that they do on many of their shows over the years where someone's saying they took our jobs, and it might mean people from other countries, it might mean people from other planets, and they're good at making certain points. And one of them is like, yeah, we can talk economics, right? We can talk about the race to the bottom, right? And how, major corporations of just the kind that donate to the Trump administration and also donated to the Biden administration. They generally donate to both Republicans and Democrats in almost equal measure, but there are some exceptions. And I mean, they want cheap labor. They want to make the biggest profits possible. They don't care how they do it. And what's I think important for us as journalists to do is be like, sure, significant numbers of immigrants in the workforce, depending on the sector, could, depress job opportunities and wages for people who, whose families have been here for decades or centuries even, but is it the fault of those folks? Is it right that money can travel freely around the globe, but people apparently cannot? Are we going to just always point the finger, or, downward? Are we going to punch down, or perhaps we should punch up at the billionaires that kind of own everything and are doing all this stuff with labor flows and are definitely doing the extractive activities that, taking people's stuff in other countries, keeping dictatorships in power in other countries to the point where they have no choice but to go to a quote unquote first world nation like the US, whichever one is closest or safest, more or less, and get in there and try to make money because they're not able to do it at home anymore. Perhaps if, our country didn't let billionaires run it, our country didn't let billionaires do whatever they want in other countries, our military, our intelligence agencies didn't back them up in ripping apart other countries, maybe people wouldn't rush here so much, right? And maybe everybody in every country would have better governments, that are more popular and populist in a good way, and maybe people would make decent livings wherever they were. And then when people traveled, it would be because they wanted to. They really wanted to have an experience living in another country, working in another country, perhaps settling there, as is their right as human beings. Maybe we would be having a different discussion than we've seen happen in the US and certainly in Europe and in many other countries beside. Okay, now I will stop. Because I don't have a zoom in for me. I have a zoom in for Scott. I have a zoom in for Chris, but not me. So I'm just over here.
I told you needed to zoom in, man.
Well, I know, but man, I'm sitting here like trying to do this. This is the first time, folks, that we have tried this because both Chris and Scott suggested this at the beginning. Can you zoom in on one person? And I'm like, yeah, I can. But then I have to sit there and think, okay, who's going to talk next? Let me have the camera on that person. And then it's hard for me to think and say something. So,
for the sake of sound bites, Scott, give us the quick on, your a friend asks you, they're in the area, they know you've been doing this reporting. They're someone with, not really a lot of extra means, but they have some time, they care, they want to do something. What are you telling people where the resources are, and then, who some of these people are that you're speaking with that are organizing these resources, or are you just going to tell them to wait for the article? But what people who have that energy, who want to do something, they're anxious right now. They're seeing things go down all around them. Where do they turn?
Yeah, I think ultimately the thing I keep hearing from all these different nonprofits, which I'll go ahead and mention them because they're worth supporting, no matter what, especially financially. That's one of the biggest things, we hear constantly. But the Welcome Project is a huge one, as well as the Connection, the Brazilian Women's Group, and Somerville Office of Immigrant Affairs are all great organizations that really need support, always need support. And just because they're getting more volunteer applications now doesn't mean that they won't need more in the future. And then beyond that, the common theme. Oh, Padres Latinos of Somerville Public Schools is also a very important one to support. Beyond that, people are really saying that they need unique programming tailored to people's neighbors. So just going around and talking to your immigrant neighbors, asking them what they need, how you can help them as they face these unique challenges. That aren't the same for everybody. And sometimes that's going and buying groceries for somebody. That's taking or accompanying them to go to the doctors, picking up their kids from school. All of those are things that are very needed. And I'm sure there's a lot more unique needs that need to be filled that I may not know of, but people in the community can figure out just by talking to their neighbors.
And there's that classic yuppie way of supporting, which is purchasing food for copious amounts of food from some of the best ethnic restaurants in Massachusetts, and really just giving money to the communities. But that's of course passive. Well, I really think that I think that's great that the volunteer applications are. Just give us an example, if like what are some of the things they're looking for in volunteers? Just really skill sets and who can help and stuff like that. The different things that they're looking for at any given time, or
Yeah, totally. I mean, people with legal backgrounds are obviously very needed, all around. People with writing backgrounds as well, people with educational backgrounds, people with immigration backgrounds that know how the system works. All those are in very high demand, and they can reach out to the Welcome Project or Connection or any of the other Padres Latinos of Somerville Public Schools.
I'll put this lower third here. So email us at info@binj.news, folks. If you're watching this, I mean, we'll try to put these organizations' websites, in the description here on YouTube, so you can check it out. But if you happen to be watching and you don't want to look at the description, email us at info@binj.news, and we can always, give you a couple of those websites if you're looking for them.
And just check the article,
Yeah, definitely. So, Scott, is there anything else you'd like to talk about this evening? The floor is open. We can certainly bounce around. Do you have any questions for us? We haven't really had anybody we've interviewed yet ask if they have questions for us yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess one question for Chris, I guess, is what brought you to the position of editorial director, and what beats did you cover before doing what you're doing now?
Cool. Yeah. I mean, so the joke is that this is where I wanted to be, because I just get to do the editorial and Jason and everybody else does all the other stuff. I still have to do fundraising and all this other stuff. It's the nature of a small operation, but editorial director is kind of, I never really thought I wanted to edit at all. I was really spoiled brat writer, never corrected my proper nouns, all of those bad habits. I was a pretty clean writer and I worked very hard, but I was definitely, I really loved being a reporter and for the good reasons and bad reasons. And I never really thought I wanted to edit. And honestly, it just kind of happened. And that's just where I was. And I really wanted to give back. As corny as it may sound, I still have a career, just I guess to a certain degree, but I was putting books out and stuff like that, and we did binge, and editing became the thing. And we were running Dig Boston and All Weekly, and listen, my editing is sometimes very hands on, sometimes not so much. I think I take a lot of pride in my architecture, kind of being able to cut stories up and make them flow. So I do like editing. It's not like something I'm trying to get away from, but I love writing, reporting. I also get bored easily. So, and listen, it takes, you got some time before you get burnt out at all, but reporting is gotta be one of the toughest, non-physical jobs. It's just unbelievably mentally taxing. And especially after you've been through something else, it's like the thought of even getting into something you're interested in could be really taxing. So, but yeah, for me, it's been 10 years now at Binge. That's about the time where I really started editing, maybe a little bit before that. And some of my first edits were shit, burying the lead, and still, so, till this day, a lot of my instincts are not exactly click focused. I really like to kind of get that story in. I like to assume that if we're doing something long form, that people are going to be there for the ride. And as some great editors taught me, I like to give them something at the end if they've stuck there with us, right? So I think for me, it's just I think it's sad that there's not a lot of long form happening anymore. I know that people still are out there to read it. The work that we do, another reason I'm so committed is that this is not always for tomorrow or even next week or next month. We have people reading our stories that we wrote years ago, and that's because we put this is the evergreen nature of not everything. A lot of stuff's in the moment. In fact, I think your story is kind of both, and your story really reminds me of, frankly, it's sad to say, a lot of the reporting we're doing during the pandemic. People just figuring shit out on the fly, and we're reporting it so other people see that. It's really important service of journalism. But as for me, I think I'll always say I like the word reporter better than journalist or anything. Just that's the basic. So like we kind of back full circle at the beginning of this interview with you. You had gone out and just interviewed people, right? That's the foundation. And
you did the shoe leather journalism stuff, that a lot of people don't do in your age group. That does worry us, that they want to do everything by wire, which makes sense for people that were stuck inside for a couple of years when they're very young, basically high school, early college, and suddenly can't go anywhere, can't talk to anybody. I mean, we didn't have to go through that until we had to go through it.
But I get the sense from you, Scott, the way you said about, writing about surfing and things that you're interested in. You're kind of like me and Jason. You like to get close to something. I started as a music writer. I was not just for backstage for the sake of it, but just to kind of understand the workings. Yeah, sure, as a groupie or a fanboy to begin with. But, it gets to the point where this is interesting and the celebrities worn off or whether it's politics, just getting to be there and see what the advanced man, how he moves the chair or she moves the chair before the politician gets in. I've always loved those front row seats, and I think you seem to have a bit of that bug as well. So that's how I got into it, and I definitely miss a lot of that. I think I might get out tomorrow and do some reporting on Beacon Hill, but I'm 50% on that. But whenever it's going to happen, I love it more than anything. I was out last week. Try to get out at least once every 2 weeks, once every week if possible, with the pen and pad, old school stuff.
Yeah. Anything else? Any follow-ups? Any other questions? Are we good?
I guess I'll do one more point. Oh, okay. One of the reasons I really do enjoy journalism is the experiential part of it. I think ultimately it's having experiences, seeing new things, and learning different things is really the core of it. And it's one of those jobs where you get to do that, every day. If you're going out and truly talking to people and getting to know new people and seeing action where it's happening in real time.
Yeah, I would say you're approaching all this with the proper spirit. So I guess to wrap up, C. Scott Morris, thanks very much for being our guest this evening.
I have to ask, Scott, have you gotten to the point yet where you know things and people get annoyed by you when they're like, we just want to talk and not know about something. Don't tell us how it actually works or the policy, or you're not there yet. Is that not happening? Well, you're around all journalism students, I guess.
Yeah, I try really hard not to be that person.
All right, well, with that, we'll end it. We'll come back when you are.
Oh yeah, should we have music? Do we want music on the way out?
We can end out with some Halloween music.
Will be Halloween music again. I'm waiting for it to show up. Oh, it started off loud. Let's drop that a bit. Okay, now we'll finish up. So, C. Scott Morris, thanks very much for coming on Binge Live. This is episode number 7. Very fun talking, and we'll be back with another Binge Live. We don't know who the guest will be yet, but it will be someone. Next Tuesday, more than likely at 8 o'clock, right here on YouTube on the Binge News channel. So thanks to Chris Faraone, my partner in various crimes, mostly journalistic. But I know that doesn't come out right, does it? But we're here every week. We've been having fun with it, and we're going to keep it up. So thanks for watching, and talk to you all soon. Now we're going to freeze.